Yeah. Right. Vsauce. Alright, let's see. Illusion of time. Oh, Pog, this sounds interesting.
Hey, Vsauce. Michael here.
Oh, this is
when
a very long video.
becomes part of the past, can it ever truly be experienced again? Obviously, my beard will grow back, but it won't be the same beard, and it won't be on the same person. It will be on a slightly older, different Michael. But of course, the bearded Michael of the past isn't completely gone. No, he still exists in our minds as a memory, and in the form of records of the past.
Oh shit.
Like images and video. Hi, I'm the slightly older, different Michael you heard about. I am 130 days older than that guy. Wow, 130 days. You know, it really doesn't seem like it was that long ago. Just as an optical illusion is a distortion of our sense of sight, a temporal illusion is a distortion of our sense of time. Some seem small, like how a minute spent waiting in line can seem to take forever, but an entire day with friends can just fly by. Some seem deeper, like the uncanny feeling we get.
Oh, my Minecraft streams just seems to take 2 minutes in my head, but it's been 6.
From recordings
hours
that make people from long ago seem more real than usual, or the strange way time seems to sneak by. For example, the songs I liked as a kid, Wannabe, Mbop, Semi-Charmed Life, are as old to kids born today as the literal oldies were when I was born. How can that be true? Am I really that old now? I mean, I shouldn't be surprised. I know how time works, but yet I don't. Far from being just mistakes, these illusions.
Can somebody please explain to me why so many people cared about this hippie crackhead philosophy major? Sounds like your average college student after they realize they are wasting their time and decide to act out and do stupid shit for attention. Happy.
I mean, people love the fucking Illuminati shit, right? And mysteries in general, right? That's pretty much it. They didn't really care about him specifically as a person because they didn't know who the fuck he was before this whole thing happened, right?
Dimension of space-time. Not one given to us by physics, not one given at all, but one made by our minds. Let's begin with the different ways there are to feel time. Actually sitting down and consciously tuning into the passage of time as it happens is called feeling time prospectively. You can't do that to time that's already happened, except you can. If I were to ask you, without looking, to guess how long you have been watching this video, you'd probably be able to come up with a guess you were reasonably confident in.
2.5 minutes.
Well, you arrived at that guess by feeling time retrospectively, by measuring it as it appears in your memory. Now, with that in mind, we are ready to approach our first illusion, the holiday paradox. A 4-hour delay at the airport before your holiday can feel unbearably long while it's happening. But once you arrive, an exciting day at your destination can seem to fly by. Those feelings are all prospective timing. A week later, retrospectively, the delay often feels like a blip in your mind, and the day of sightseeing feels like a much longer, bigger part of your life. These are the long-short and short-long patterns of felt time.
All right. That sounds reasonable to me.
Whether what you are doing is empty or full. An empty activity is monotonous, unstimulating, unimportant to you, whereas a full activity is packed with sensations, novelty, significance, context change, and challenge. Now, I experienced this during my 3 days in isolation. While I was there, time dragged very, very slowly.
I saw this.
A fear I have right now is that it's just Friday, and that there's still a lot of time left.
But now, years later, it's hard to believe that I spent 3 full days in that room? Jeez, it seems like something I barely did. Well, it's believed that prospective time feels fast when an activity is full because you're not busy thinking about time. If you're not attending to it, you're busy with something else, well, you won't notice how much time has passed. But to understand retrospective illusions, let's ask a different question. Does time speed up as we get older? Many of you may feel the same way. Looking back, my childhood feels like it lasted so long.
I mean,
but my 20s went
not
by
technically,
faster. My
but
30s are going by
relatively.
even faster than that. A popular explanation is the proportion theory. It suggests that time seems to speed up as we age because each new unit of time that we live is smaller
less.
relative to all the time that came before. The year you lived as a 9-year-old was 10% of your entire existence up to that point. But when you're 30, another year is just 3% more life. Studies have found little evidence that weeks, months, or even years are retrospectively remembered as passing faster by those who are older. But decades? Yes. And while it's true that the older we get, the faster we tend to think the last 10 years went by, that only appears to be the case until about the age of 50. After that, the speed of decades appears to plateau. A leading explanation is that how long a duration feels depends on how many things in it can be recalled. In my normal life, lots of different things happen every 3 days. But during the 3 days I was in isolation, so little happened that I have few distinct memories from it.
So they're saying that 50-year-olds have more boring lives than before that, and that's why it doesn't grow by as fast, right? That's pretty much why.
Mind sees that emptiness and perceives that it was brief. So, perhaps a decline in new experiences and rapid novelty as we age means fewer events our brains decide to commit to memory. So then, looking back, because there are fewer distinct memories from more recent decades, we assume they were shorter. You know, reflecting on all of this, it's striking just how many moments are forgettable. John Koenig, the author of the Dictionary of Obscure Sorrows, calls the awareness of how few days are memorable olika. Over time, our specific daily perceptions of what happened conglomerate into generalized ideas about how things were. Themes, moods, the big picture. What was perceptual becomes conceptual. And concepts are good. They lower cognitive load by wringing out details, leaving us with the broader, lighter gist. But they can also obscure reality, which brings us to our second distortion, chronological illusions. The world of our experience is not made of distinct entities. It's a continuity of fuzzy, overlapping blobs, and we impose concepts on it. For example, is a hot dog a sandwich? Is cereal soup? How many holes does a straw have? Those aren't questions about reality, they're questions about words we made up. Periodization is the chopping up of time into contrived pieces like the Stone Age, the Renaissance, the 80s, the 90s. But here's the thing. When did the 80s or 90s really happen? I mean, mathematically, they refer to years that have 8s or 9s in the tens place. But conceptually? Well, it's not like on January 1st, 1980, people woke up and were like, whoa, 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 guys, it's the 80s, quick, everyone, change your clothes. Concepts say too much and too little. Facts that expose their imperfections are perennial favorites on social media. I made an entire video about them, in fact. But what hasn't been discussed yet is the mechanisms by which we allow them to do their dirty work. Let's dig in and see what we can find. If I asked you to lay down on the floor of a windowless, clockless room and get up after you thought a minute had passed, you'd probably do a pretty good job. But if I asked you to get up after you thought 10 years had passed, that'd be hard. We lack an ability to sense and grasp long periods of time. Also, we can't remember everything that happens. So instead of comprehending history's correct scale and structure, I believe that our minds often just use how we think about past events to place them relative to each other in time. One way we do this is through what I call the conceptual comparison heuristic. a technique whereby we use the similarity of elements in our conceptions of things to judge their temporal distance. If our concepts of two things suggest wildly different times, it's natural to assume that a lot of things happened between them. And if a lot happened, the duration separating them must be large. Alternatively, if our concepts aren't too different, the time between them must be bare of events, and so it feels brief. It's not a bad strategy.
I don't understand what the fuck is happening right now.
Tyrannosaurs died out 66 million years ago, and when T-Rexes began roaming the Earth, stegosaurs had already been extinct for more than 80 million years. To a T-Rex, the Stegosaurus was even more ancient than we think T-Rexes are. Here's another example. When we think of Marilyn Monroe, we think of a young woman. Old Hollywood, mid-century glamour, Americana, black and white.
Who the fuck do you think watches your videos?
We think of an old woman in color in England and news headlines. Because those conceptions are quite different, we mentally place each woman in a different
I thought it was a phone going on. I thought it was my phone. Hang on.
Both born in
Does this sound like a phone?
To a T-Rex, the Stegosaurus was even more ancient than we think T-Rexes are. Here's another.
You fucking hear that in the video? What the hell?
Already been extinct for more than 80 million years. To a T-Rex, the Stegosaurus was even more ancient than we think T-Rexes are.
You don't hear that sound? That's like a text signal. Are you kidding me? You don't hear this?
Dinosaurs died out 66 million years ago, and when T-Rexes began roaming the Earth, Stegosaurs for more than 80 million years. To a T-Rex, the Stegosaurus was even more ancient than we think T-Rexes are. Here's another example. When we think of Marilyn Monroe, we think of a young
you don't hear this sound? Your text signal fucking sucks. That's pretty much a standard text signal, is it not? Like iPhone text me.
Old Hollywood, mid-century glamour, Americana, black and white.
I guess we have a lot of boomers in chat if you can't hear it.
We think of an old woman in color in England and news headlines. Because those conceptions are quite different, we mentally place each woman in a different time. So it can come as a surprise to learn that they were both born in the same year. Similarly, it can be surprising to learn that Anne Frank and Martin Luther King Jr. were also born in the same year. And if they were alive today, they would both be younger than the Queen of England. When Harriet Tubman was born, Thomas Jefferson was alive. And when she died, Ronald Reagan was alive. This is surprising to many of us because our concepts of these people are anchored to them as adults. But Harriet Tubman was a 4-year-old when Thomas Jefferson died, and when she died, Ronald Reagan was a 2-year-old. Far from just being amusing, chronological illusions can often have teeth. America can feel like an idea fixed long before any of us by the overwhelming bulk of events that came before. But Barbara Walters has been alive for more than a third of America's entire history. And if you were 25, you have already lived through and been a part of more than 10% of America's history. Chronological illusions may also be caused by what I call the construal level heuristic, a technique whereby we place things in time based on whether we construe them concretely or abstractly. In social psychology, construal level theory describes how abstract and concrete thinking relate to psychological distance. That is, how distant something seems as opposed to how distant it actually is. Now, unsurprisingly, it's been found that people tend to think about things that are psychologically distant more abstractly. But studies have also found that if people are asked to think about an event abstractly, they'll consider it more distant than if asked to construe it concretely. This may explain why things can turn out to be longer ago or more recent than we thought. If an event recedes especially quickly from relevance or is suddenly replaced in our daily thoughts by other more urgent events unconnected to it, our minds may shift its construal to a higher level, making it feel further back in time than it really is. Conversely, if attending to the low-level details of an event continues to be important, our construal level heuristic will make it feel closer in time than it really is. Our third illusion of time comes from the fact that time is always moving forward. Because of that, the psychological distances we feel towards things should also always be changing. But not all of them do. The belief that your place in time is stable is what I call the chronostatic illusion. Tim Urban pointed out that it is now the case that Jurassic Park, Forrest Gump, The Lion King were all released closer to the moon landing than today. As a person who remembers The Lion King being brand new, and remembers feeling at that time that
none of us remember the fucking moon landing. We weren't fucking born.
Weird.
We can't relate
to this. The Lion King seems so much more recent than the moon landing ever did to me. The conceptual comparison heuristic places them far apart. My concept of the 90s will probably always stray from my concept of the present a little less than it should, because the 90s and now have something in common that the 90s and the 60s never did or will. Me. Also, my construal level of The Lion King may resist becoming abstract, because The Lion King continues to evolve and happen. The mechanisms I use to place things in time have sunk hooks into The Lion King, creating a sort of chronostatic cling that fools me into believing it's more near. The music that was new when I was young has also been tethered in my mind to the idea of new stuff only us kids get, even as it has actually been drifting away, as far away as the stuff I used to think was far. A chronostatic illusion is spectacularly broken when you realize that you have become as old as your parents were when you were born. It doesn't always seem quite right.
Literally
they
true.
Came first, and as such, should always be older. But suddenly, you're aware of a way in which they aren't. Your age gap with people in the past is not static. Your parents keep getting older right along with you, but the people they were don't. This can lead to empathetic realizations. They weren't any wiser or more folded into the world then than you are now. Considering the temporal perspectives of other people leads us to a fourth distortion, the chronocentric illusion. The belief that our
Everything
own
he
relationship
said
to time is the best
sounded like
frame of
chronocentric
reference,
illusion.
or that it's more important and more real than any other. My grandparents used to tell me about how when they were kids, they didn't have television. And I always thought that sounded so weird. I mean, obviously, I knew it was true, but like, what the heck did they do with their free time? It wasn't relatable at all. People back then must have been so different, not real in the same way I was. But I remember a time before the internet, before mobile phones, and it wasn't that weird. The internet and cell phones are still, in my mind, an additional thing we now have. But for
I
daughter,
didn't watch TV with my
always
friends
had.
anyway,
And when I tell
right?
her about a time when
You
no
did
one
other
had the
shit
internet and
if
didn't
you were
know
my
they needed
age,
it,
if you're
it
around
will
my
likely
age.
sound to
You didn't watch
her
fucking
just
TV
like
with
the
your
old
friends.
stories
You went
I
and
heard
did shit
about
outside.
growing up with no TV.
So
And that's bizarre. My grandparents' childhood was weird. It was the olden days. Mine was totally normal. Protagonist syndrome is the belief that you are the main character of the universe.
I literally am, though.
Recognizing that you aren't.
Because this is a simulation. So I must be the main character, right? Or I wouldn't have a consciousness. I would just have codes, you know.
Is what John Koenig famously called
You're all in my
sonder.
simulation.
The realization that other people, like that stranger over there you will never see again, have full lives, just as important and consuming to them as yours is to you. I'd like to add to protagonist syndrome the concept of ab ovo syndrome. Ab ovo means from the egg, from the very beginning. In literature, it describes a story that begins at the start, ab ovo, as opposed to in the middle, in medias res. Ab ovo syndrome is the belief that the movie of the universe began when you began, that the times of your life are the plot and contain the climax, and that everything before you was just backstory, everything after merely sequels. When you realize that that's not true, that you were not born ab ovo, but in medias res, that you'll die before the credits, and that everyone who has ever lived
Who
was a
thinks
fully
like that,
fleshed out
though?
protagonist in their own
What?
minds, that feeling is what I call chronosonder. Sonder
we
not
go
just for
again,
people
dude.
over there, but for people over then.
Chronos is
Overcoming
this
the
fucking
chronocentric
safe
illusion
word.
isn't always easy. It doesn't help that people from the past are finished. Unlike us who still have choices to make, they tell the same story over and over again. They're also separated by barriers made of their own evidence. The world wasn't actually black and white in the past, and it didn't suddenly become vertical in the present. Obviously, we all know that, but the arbitrary technical properties of a time's recording media can influence our perception of the past nonetheless. If silent films didn't look so much different from what could be done just a few decades later, would it be nearly as surprising to learn that Charlie Chaplin lived long enough to watch Star Wars? When I was in high school, I saw 2001's Pipe Dream for the first time, and it blew my mind. My friends and I honestly believed that it was a real thing someone had built. But recently, I looked it up on YouTube, and I was like, this is clearly a computer animation. What the heck was wrong with us? And what do you know? The top comment was exactly that sentiment. Our perception of the past is constantly evolving.
I think I saw that one as a kid, actually. Not gonna lie, and I thought it was real too.
We also think about it.
I think I got you
The
baited.
material properties of an artifact can influence our relationship with what came before.
Wow, that was very impressive then.
Further away.
That far back to make a
Faded
CGI
yellow
like
color,
that.
Sepia, SD pixelated video.
I mean, as a probably an
Technological
amateur,
features can
right?
make the
Not like
past
Star
seem like it
Wars
was never
fucking
as real
CGI
as the present.
hired.
But some kinds of evidence collapse that chronocentric divide. One way they can do it right now is by being demotic, ordinary, personal, candid. Such recordings are much more similar to the media we exchange with each other right now in the present. This footage of people goofing around in a 7-Eleven in 1987 has more than 6 million views, not just because of nostalgia, but because it's like visiting past people in their natural habitat at a time zoo. This isn't some pageant with timeless ambitions. It's a view out the window of a time machine they don't know is there. Another way evidence can corrode chronocentric illusions is by containing a
The fucking the 2050s, they're gonna have fucking so much nostalgia content. Oh, look at this. This is from 2020.
convention
Look how they were dressed,
more
lol.
than we expect. People in old photos look like serious robots because back then you had to stay in the same pose for a long time to get a picture taken. But also, a long-standing trope in the world of images up to that point was that smiling or looking goofy wasn't a sign of happiness, but of drunkenness or stupidity. But every so often, this image pops up online, and people vehemently debate whether it's actually old or not. Sure, it's black and white, but the expression seems too normal to really be on a person from the past. It is, however, actually an honest-to-gosh picture taken in the early 1900s, one of the earliest known photographs of a human smiling.
That should be the new
The
PogChamp.
juxtaposition of an expression someone today might make with a
Mouth
media that
open
suggests
equals
a
PogChamp.
technology of the past creates an opportunity for Chronosonder. The subject is both dead and undead, gone, but not as unrelatably far as we may have thought the past was. Finally, the chronocentric divide can fade when we find the past captured in a medium that was rare at the time but more common now. This is footage taken by an early HD camera of New York City in 1993. It's pretty cool, but there's something almost uncanny about it. Watching it isn't exactly like time traveling back to 1993, but it looks more like video taken today than many of us expect. It's like peering through a telescope. We can see them, but they can't see us. They appear closer, more actual than usual. We lean in to get grasps of what it was like. That's part of the allure of time travel. As L.P. Hartley said, the past is a foreign country. They do things differently there. But it hasn't always been that way. Time travel wasn't a common feature of fiction until the 19th century. Not
Always
because
with the
people hadn't thought of it
fucking-
before, they had. But the past and future weren't rich with interesting destinations in the same way they are to us now. In the year 1008, it wasn't an insult to call someone 1000 and late. 1,000 years ago, the culture and technology
What?
around you was unlikely to be foreign to your weren't rich with interesting destinations in the same way they are to us now. In the year 1008, it wasn't an insult to call someone 1,000 and late. 1,000 years ago, the culture and technology around you was unlikely to be foreign to your parents.
I don't get it. Was that like a
or
Sumer
great-grandparents. And outside of an act of God
comparison?
or gods, you didn't expect them to be foreign to your children or their children either.
1,000
years
late?
ago, there were no
What?
80s parties because the 980s weren't interestingly different. Pre-modern societies viewed the present as a continuation of the past. Changes were interpreted as temporary disturbances of the natural
Good joke.
state.
It's
But
a
today,
rhyme.
we
Rhymes
see the
equals
present
jokes.
as something special. Change is significant enough and rapid enough now that we would imagine ourselves quite differently had we
It's
been
funny
born
'cause I
10
always
years
rhyme.
earlier
Get it?
or later. Zachary Sayre Schiffman points out, we fail to realize that people before the 18th century did not see themselves this way. Instead of having a history, they regarded themselves as having an unchanging nature or essence, whose full realization might be impeded or impelled, but not otherwise shaped by events. Nostalgia existed, but for moments and places gone simply because they were prior to or away from here and now, not because they were fundamentally different and categorically irretrievable. As the discovery of antiquities...
Nostalgia will happen more and more because technology grows exponentially, right? Like the time change, like there wasn't much invented in the same time as it is today, right? Back in the 1800s. So in fucking 300 years, they'll get fucking nostalgia after like 2 years, right?
New worlds and new
Looking back
species
2 years, that's
accelerated.
nostalgia for
As
them.
the invention of new technologies
Similar
and new
to
ways of
10 years
recording
for us.
accelerated, the present became less and less like the past. Reinhard Koselleck has argued that between 1750 and 1850, the acceleration of history reached a speed at which static or cyclical views of time had to be replaced with our modern view, which understands the past to be essentially different from the present. It used to be that things passed. Now, there is a past. As technological and social change accelerate, the window of time within which things can be trusted to remain stable shrinks. In such a world, to stand still is scary. Hartmut Rosa observed, the pre-modern experience of being excluded is replaced in modernity by the constantly present, fear-inducing possibility of becoming excluded, in the sense of getting left behind. Things change faster, and we keep keeping up because we are afraid to die. Whoever lives twice as fast can realize twice as many worldly possibilities, and thus, as it were, live 2 lives in the span of 1. Whoever becomes infinitely fast no longer needs to fear death, the annihilator of options. Acceleration becomes a
I don't get
secular
what
substitute
twice
for
as
eternity.
what?
To achieve this salvation, we try to make things faster and easier to save time. But one of the greatest hoodwinks we ever pulled on ourselves was not noticing that the things we do to save time leave us with less of it and more alone in it.
Nostalgia
No
will
technological
keep
change
getting
is only
worse
temporary.
because the world keeps getting sicker sagging.
Nostalgia will keep getting worse because the world keeps getting shitter. Not true. If anything, not if anything actually, but it will stay the same pretty much because happiness is relative, right? So even things that you consider shitty today might be considered, wow, that wasn't actually that bad, into, wow, that was actually pretty good in 30 years of fucking apocalyptic fucking zombie coronavirus, right? So it's not actually true. You're always comparing experiences, and it might make a shitty one seem nostalgic after 30 years of being tortured
The
in
car
some
allowed
basement,
people
right?
to travel more quickly and whenever they wanted. But once available, it meant people could live further from where they worked. So cities and towns changed. Personal associations changed. Roads divided neighborhoods, created new opportunities, while ending others. Jobs and industries and cultural forms of expression and a whole different society sprang into existence simply because we found a way to move faster. Likewise, smartphones and the internet made information access and communication easier and faster, but that's not all they did. Along with them came new social conventions, new communities, new levels of exposure to ideas and conflict, a new understanding of what it meant to be available. That's a lot to have to adapt to. They even redefined what now is made of. Digital spaces are filled with not just what's being said, but also what has been said. And it's all right there, not tucked into a library across town or on a tiny plaque on a statue covered in bird poop. It's in our hands and outside of time. Things used to acquire signs of age, veneers that tucked them appropriately into their place in time. Now, they're automatically updated to always look like now. Digital spaces are so packed with timeless messages between bygone people that we don't even ask, "Is anyone here?" anymore. Instead, we ask, "Is anyone now?" In order to adapt to all of this, we have to consume information in an increasingly dehumanized, decontextualized, and desensualized way. Each next bit is often unrelated to the last. Our participation is not acknowledged or assumed, and it's all fed to us by machines we don't know and didn't build that only put it in our eyes and ears. The sheer weight of all of this accreting information and its growing accessibility is awe-inspiring. It may even be our purpose. I mean, what else produces such detailed records? Purposefully or not, we record, save, collect, organize, and preserve events like nothing else in the universe. I've said before that if humans were to go extinct, the sun would still shine, the universe would keep expanding, Jupiter would continue being gassy, but the universe would lose its best autobiographer. But the technologies of this project have yet to address our bodies. Enter the TV paradox. Remember the short-long and long-short patterns of time? Well, a new pattern has been emerging and growing in frequency. Short-short. It was first observed in people watching TV alone. They reported feeling like time flew by quickly. Oh, wow, have I really been watching for 4 hours? But later, they didn't remember their TV session as a major moment of significant import or duration. They didn't attend to the passing of time during it. They didn't feel bored or like time dragged, but they also didn't accumulate a lot of new, significant, memory-worthy experiences. Rapid, stimulating streams of experience provide a fullness that makes time fly by, but fractured, desensualized, one-way experiences.
That's why I'm moving out to a fucking like a fucking what do you call those things? Like a timber cabin in the middle of the woods, right? Then you'll live a fucking long motherfucking life, dude. No internet, no fucking TV, alright? No fucking Netflix. Then you'll have that's the secret to living a long life, dude. You just fucking isolate yourself and you have to fucking chop wood.
Connected
to heat up
ourselves and
fucking
our larger life history.
Probably not hunt.
Retrospectively, they don't fill up a lot of space.
Rough.
They burn our time on both ends.
Still.
It feels shorter during and after. Interestingly, short
Minecraft IRL.
When people engage
Damn
with
right.
they have connections with. For example, things they own memorabilia of, made friendships through, attended conventions about. So the pace of life may be taking your life from you, but standing could give you your life back. In the future, we will surely find other ways to overcome the negative side effects of the faster experiences we crave. The development of digital media that engage the other senses, more linked as they are with long-term memory, or that build contexts for us could help. So could surgical solutions, like removing the parts of the brain that make us not like doom scrolling. Probably first, any anxieties will be recognized as a condition treatable with medication. Now, this is all to say that we live in a transitional period. The conquest of space made the world smaller, and now the conquest of time has made our lives smaller. We live after the conquering of time, but before its resurrection. In the meantime, make some time for time to control you. Be bored, miss out, fall behind, feel time passing. Lose track of time while
chat?
experiencing
I'm doing
only
you guys
what
a
your
favor.
body can alone. You might not have the time of your life, but you'll have more time of your life.
I'm doing you guys a motherfucking favor, and all you do is complain.
Thanks for watching.
Ungrateful sons of bitches. I liked it, I liked it. Puts things into perspective, no pun intended. But I truly believe that at one point, if you are my age plus minus 10 years, or actually if you are just living in this time period, you need to fucking cut yourself free at one point when you can, you know, cut your way free from all this social media, fucking Netflix binging shows, fucking, you know, all that. I guarantee it will probably make you live a more fulfilled life. I can't guarantee it because obviously I haven't done it, but you know, I feel like it. I mean, what about my Twitch? Yeah, no Twitch probably. No Twitch. You're addicted to Twitch? Yes.
TBH Forsen, I went for 3 months without any technology whatsoever. And after the first few weeks, time flies by really fast because you're just so bored. So I think it's something that ingrained in us now.
Wait, what the fuck did you say? After the first few weeks, time flies by really fast because you're just so bored. That doesn't make any sense. Bored equals fast. I don't know. Is it trolling or did he just fucking type it wrong? He means slow. All right. Alright, I get it. Tempo Storm Donut says, watch on the other screen. You get banned for horse gif that flashed for 2 seconds. He didn't, question mark? What the fuck? Also, I wonder if that hurts. I'm not clicking your link. I'm assuming it's some sort of penis getting mutilated. Not what I would like to watch right now. I'll take your word for it. It probably hurt. A pig donut says, watch this commercial.